All right, we're back at the Colorado practice fields after practice number 19, and Adam, the Buffs, just a little more than a week away from game day, and you kind of start sensing there's a little juice that's ramping up here.
Yeah, McIntyre said they're doing some scout team, or he calls it show team stuff, which that's when you're starting to get into the game plan, and I think that's when guys start to kind of know what their role is, so it'll be interesting. Typically, they usually release a depth chart, I would expect maybe next Tuesday with the game notes.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how some of these battles are shaken out. Clayton Adams, even though the left side wasn't settled a few days ago, said by the end of this week, you got to have that locked down, because when you do get into game plan, you got to know what your role is going to be.
Well, let's talk about that real quick, because who do you expect to be on that left side? We sort of talked about it the other day, but I'm really expecting it to be the veterans on that left side. What do you think? Josh Kaiser and Brett Tons.
Probably Josh Kaiser and Brett Tons. I don't know what they're going to do when they rotate Jake Moretti in there, because McIntyre said, he's going to play this year. They don't know exactly how much, just because it's dependent on how his leg holds up. At that point, do you move Kaiser into guard, or do you keep Tons out there? McIntyre's mentioned Tons this year as being a guy that's had a really physical camp. So and sometimes, unfortunately, injuries can sometimes make these things play out the way they're going to. But at this point, I guess I would agree with you that I expect him to roll with the experienced guys there.
Well, another guy that's had a physical camp is the Tasmanian Devil, and now he's gone, right? Philip Lindsay is gone, but Mike McIntyre said there's a new Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah, Philip Lindsay's gone, but now they've got a defensive Tasmanian Devil. I asked McIntyre about John Van Diest, who had to go in for surgery this past November for the third straight year in November. But the kid just has a great attitude, and you could see McIntyre's face light up when he started talking about John Van Diest. And he's not 100% at this point. You can't be coming back from a torn ACL in November, but he's been able to participate every day. And playing at Jack linebacker, they need depth there. We don't know if Akil Jones is going to be ready for the season opener. So he's a guy that just high motor. When he played at Cherry Creek, his closing speed is some of the best of any in-state kid I've seen in this state. So, and he's a kid you really root for.
At the same time, and I like John, but it's hard for me to call anybody else a Tasmanian Devil right now. Isn't it for you?
Well, it's so natural too. John Van Beast. I mean, that just rolls right off the tongue.
I like that better, but it just seems it's too soon to call somebody else the Tasmanian Devil.
That's true.
So, Mike McIntyre, we were talking before this. This camp has been in pretty good spirits, and let's talk about his demeanor a little bit, because last year obviously there were so many distractions around this team, and I think that we could see some of that taking a toll, not only on him but on this team in general. But he's been very open in this camp, much more than I think that we've seen in his previous years here. Do you feel that way, that he's just been kind of a more open guy? You can get more information out of him?
It's not even – this is by far the most open he's ever been as a head coach, and some days were better than others before. But if you want to sip the Kool-Aid, read into McIntyre's demeanor, because it seems like he really enjoys talking about this football team, opening up about it. And the one day he was kind of short with us, coming to find out later, that's the one practice that Montez really struggled in. He's obviously had a great camp other than that. So he's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve. And now obviously head coaches have to bite their tongue about certain things. We saw when John Embry was here, he was too honest. He kept talking about the talent level not being as good as other teams, and that they just had to find a way to be the better team for 3 hours on Saturday. Well, that stuff seeps in the locker room. We love it as media if the coaches give you an honest answer, but that's not the right approach. So him opening up, but I mean, at times, obviously, if there's a guy that's struggling, he might bite his tongue a little bit here and there, but he's definitely been open with us.
Yeah, and he's never going to be, like an Embry, where he's totally honest. But I think it goes back to the spring, and we talked about it as one of the last practices of spring, where you asked him to talk about some of the guys that have made the most growth, and he went through a list and mentioned guys. And so that's kind of the way he's been more honest, is just kind of like he'll talk more honestly about how guys are practicing, and certainly some guys, he'll just say, oh, yeah, he's doing okay. But I think you can read a little bit into that as well.
Yeah. And you got to put yourself in his shoes. He's managing 105 football players and just coming right off of practice. It's not an easy thing. Same reporters day after day. I mean, we try to come up with new questions, but I mean, we're practice 19 in. I mean, there's only so many questions you can ask.
We're ready to ask about the Rams, I think.
We're ready to ask about the Rams, but as a head coach, sometimes you have so much responsibility on your plate, you might lose sight of the fact that if it's not for fans out there, you don't have a job. We don't have a job. So we're kind of in the middle of getting information out there. So the more open he is with us, the more information the fans get, which I think, I'm sure I've seen it in the past where fans get frustrated with the McIntyre scrums, and I think I've seen a lot of fans really enjoying the fact that they're getting information this year.
Yeah, and we'll see how that lasts throughout the season, but certainly it's kind of refreshing so far in this camp, and I think it's a good sign. Like Adam said, if you want to sip the Kool-Aid, that might be a good sign to look at and say, okay, McIntyre, he's in better spirits, his team seems to be in better spirits, and he seems to feel pretty good about this team. So that'll do it for us today, and we'll be back, I guess, on Saturday. There's no practice tomorrow, but we'll be back on Saturday to talk about that practice.